For the Rebel.media, I'm Ezra Levant, standing in the heart of London. The street is called Old Bailey. That is the nickname for the Central Criminal Court of London, where today, in a hearing lasting less than 20 minutes, the highest judge of the Old Bailey, going from memory, his name is Nicholas Hilliard, QC. He's the most senior judge there. I think his title is reporter. He had a case management hearing for Tommy's contempt of court trial. Now, what does that mean? That means it was not the substantive hearing of did Tommy do something right or wrong. It was a planning meeting. Tommy was ready to go. I know this because I had consulted with Tommy as recently as yesterday on some of the matters he was set to testify in his witness statement. Tommy was ready, his solicitors were ready, and he had a new barrister who was ready as well. Yet the government, in the form of the Attorney General's appointee, was not ready. And the judge himself was not ready. And so the matter is now put over to October 23rd. October 23rd, almost a month from now. And why is that important? Because when Tommy was arrested by 7 or 8 policemen and put in the back of a truck in Leeds on May 25th, he was taken from the street to a police truck, to a police station, to court, to prison. All of those steps, arrest, prosecution, conviction, and sentence, and off to prison in 5 hours. In 5 hours, that would be what we call a drumhead trial. If that were to be done in a place like Venezuela or Iran, we would say that's obviously a political stitch-up, especially if it was done to a journalist. But my point is, in 5 hours, Tommy's liberties were taken away, and here the Attorney General has taken 5 months. Another delay. This was supposed to happen on September 4th. Then it was supposed to happen today, September 27th. Now maybe it'll happen on October 23rd if there's not another delay. Now where I come from, if the government delays again and again and again, the defendant, the accused, can have the matter thrown out because it's a constitutional right, at least where I come from, to have a speedy trial. And I come from Canada, which is a daughter legally and constitutionally of the United Kingdom. So I think the very fact that this whole hearing was in the Old Bailey, the most serious criminal court, if you look at the other cases on the docket, the most recent Westminster terrorist is being tried here. Other murder and terrorism cases. Why is a minor matter of civil contempt being heard at the most grave criminal court in the land by the most senior judge used to murder cases? I'm not saying contempt of court is a trifle, but I am saying that as a legal species, it is not a crime. It's more similar to a parking ticket. You don't get a criminal record, you don't go to criminal court for a parking ticket. And yet Tommy's case will be heard at Old Bailey on October 23rd. That in itself is alarming. Obviously, it's alarming that this matter is going back for a second case, a second trial. Again, to use a North American idea of double jeopardy, he was improperly tried, convicted, sentenced, and punished according to the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal of the United Kingdom, led by no one less than the Lord Chief Justice himself, said that every element of the way Tommy was treated on May 25th was inappropriate. And yet they get a do-over? They get a do-over. It wasn't Tommy's screw-up, and yet he must come again with his 3 lawyers again. Do you know how much that costs? I happen to know because I'm doing the crowdfunding for it. And that goes to my thesis, that they're trying to break Tommy psychologically, physically, and financially, and it has nothing to do with the alleged offense that he's committed. It is a collateral attack on him, an asymmetrical attack on him to shut him up politically. I want to tell you something that you may have seen if you watched the longer interview that I sat down with Tommy a couple weeks ago for a couple hours. If you haven't seen it yet, may I recommend you watch that video. Tommy said, and I think it was in the video, when he was in prison, an officer of what they call tag over here. In North America, it would probably be called parole. An officer came to visit him in jail and said, we're getting ready for when you're finally released on parole, and we have some conditions for you. All right, what are the conditions? Do they relate to the original matter? So if the matter of contempt of court was legitimate, if they were really worried that Tommy was interfering with the integrity of a trial, perhaps a bail condition would be you can't report on trials involving rape gangs. Okay, that at least has some nexus there, right? If the conditions would be you can't set foot on a court during a trial. But what conditions did they say they wanted to put on Tommy? Nothing to do with rape gangs, nothing to do with courts. The tag officer, the parole officer who came to Tommy's cell saying, we're going to release you in a number of months, but the condition is you may not use the internet at all for any reason whatsoever, any journalistic reason, any political reason, even as a livelihood. And Tommy makes his living now as a journalist. What on earth does Tommy have a Facebook page, or Tommy making YouTube videos, or Tommy sending emails? What on earth does that have to do with the alleged reason that Tommy is in court? Do you see my point? If this whole legal process was genuinely because Tommy had done a certain thing wrong in Leeds on that day, in May 25th, then you would imagine that any bail conditions, any tag conditions would pertain there too. But they said, no, Tommy, we'll let you out, Tommy, but only if you never communicate to the world again, other than by snail mail. Do you see my point? The reason why the bail officer, the parole officer, wanted him to be banned from the internet had nothing to do with what he allegedly did wrong. It's the fact they're trying to shut Tommy Robinson up. The fact that he was the first journalist jailed in more than 70 years is just because they want to take him off the streets and shut him up. The fact that they put him in a dangerous prison and force him into solitary confinement is because they want to shut him up, either by breaking him or frankly having him killed. And that's why hundreds of people are still here hours after Tommy was released. And I would estimate that there was at least 1,500 people here earlier today chanting his name. And I think there were 16 Antifa protesters on the left. I'm going to wrap up my summary here. I will probably have a few other videos on specific issues later. I interviewed my former Rebel alumnus, Gavin McInnes, who I'm delighted to say came up here to witness the court today. I think it's important that more Americans cover this story. I'm glad the Rebel has filled a void. But let me close by asking, where's the British media? Now, there were 8 journalists in that room. But will they report accurately, and will they report even close to fairly? Well, the proof of the puddings and the tasting, we'll see later. But my experience covering Tommy's court cases in July and August tells me that mainstream media journalists in the courthouse itself lie about basic facts. And plenty of journalists who didn't even bother to come to court are misleading. And so I regret that it falls to the citizen journalists. And you can see around me how many citizens have their cell phone cameras and are tweeting and Facebooking. Isn't it something that citizen journalists have to fill the gap? I think we need more conservative journalists to rebut the liberal journalists. I'll end on that note. All my reports, my video reports, will be at TommyTrial.com. Feel free to see them there. Cost me about $1,500 to fly over here, and I'm staying one night in a hotel. If you can help chip in, please go to TommyTrial.com. I will be back on October 23rd because we've got to tell the truth as long as Tommy's in jeopardy. For the Rebel.media, I'm Ezra Levant. I'm here in the UK for Tommy's second contempt of court trial. To see all my videos on the subject, go to TommyTrial.com.